Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Buying your first rental property can feel like there are an inordinate number of processes to know about. Today, step by step, I walk you through it all. From how to build your credit score, to due diligence, to inspection, to appraisal, to closing, and more, you'll clearly learn how to buy your first rental property or your next one today on Get Rich Education. You can get a 50-year-old house somewhere or buy a new one directly from the builder with tenant resilient amenities already built in. With over 3,000 Florida units at different construction stages, they are exclusively for investors. President Wagner and Alaska and team also invest strongly in their own product. That's belief. Start at buildtorentdirect.com. That's build the number 2 rentdirect.com or text 407-927-5074. Hey, is your IRA in a real estate syndication? Yikes, a 37% UBIT tax could hit you, but you still have a chance to set up your EQRP and avoid this. Did you make too much money in 2020 and need more deductions? Now federal law lets you set up an EQRP in 2021 and get deductions for last year, retroactively. Even put old IRA and 401k money in Bitcoin, gold, or your own business. Get control of all of your retirement money, tax and penalty free. Text EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Oswego, New York to Oswego, Illinois, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Let's do this. How to buy your first income property step by step. And, especially if you haven't bought a property lately, this can be a good primer about what to expect and mistakes to avoid, and ways to save yourself a lot of time and money. In fact, if you bought a number of properties, you're going to learn a few things here that you probably didn't know before. Now, this was posted recently on our Get Rich Education YouTube channel, and we made a programming decision to build the entire audio portion here for you, so that way you can make this information portable here in the podcast. And near the beginning here, you are going to hear some things that you've heard before, but there are a number of things that I have never discussed here on the show, from credit score resources to how you can show more income to your mortgage loan underwriter without actually even having to make more income, and what square footage range you should aim for before you buy a rental property. There's an ideal range. What's better than clearly learning about how to buy your first rental property in under 30 minutes? Well, it's learning about how to buy your first rental property in less than 28 minutes. That's what we're about to do here. This is a timeless piece of content. In fact, years later, you may want to refer back to episode 368 here. Here it is, how to buy your first rental property. And after this plays, there will be a break, and then I'm going to come back and give you some supplemental context about what you just got to learn. Tons of tactics and tricks that are going to save you a lot of time and money from me, a 19-year real estate investor. It's really information and insights that you're not going to get anywhere else, and it's from someone that's owned millions of dollars of real estate from a young age. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. We're going to use an example of a $200,000 single-family rental home that's new construction and is not owner-occupied. So it's a property that you're never going to live in. It's going to be a rental from day one. And we will go ahead and get to that example shortly. But with real estate investing, you can't just point and click and buy and sell something just like that. There is low liquidity in real estate, and that is both a bad thing because there are a few steps to go through, which we're going to cover shortly, but it's also a good thing because this is what keeps real estate prices relatively stable. There's no panic selling in real estate like there are in a lot of other asset classes that help stabilize prices. So we're generally talking about properties that are single-family homes up to fourplexes today. They kind of all fall under this category with this sample single-family rental that we're going to be talking about. And we're talking about either new or renovated property that is turnkey property. A turnkey property means a property that's already rehabilitated, or it's new construction, it's already tenanted, and it's held under management for you. Yes, companies do this at scale, turnkey real estate companies, and then they sell it to investors like you, so you have rental income typically from day one, on that first day that you buy the property. Yes, turnkey real estate investing, an industry that's been around for about 20 years that I utilize a lot myself. It allows you, the investor, to go outside your own market into places like the Midwest and South, which is typically where you get the best ratio of rent income to purchase price, not in your backyard. Well, if turnkey properties are so great, why doesn't the turnkey company just buy the property themselves? Well, often they do. They do eat a lot of their own cooking, but yeah, they can't afford to buy them all. Few people have 1,000 single-family homes. So really with what you need to do is make sure that you have an appropriate credit score, because you typically want to get a loan in order to purchase the property. With these conventional loans that you get for these rental properties, you typically want to have a credit score of at least 620. We're talking about the FICO scoring model, FICO. It stands for the Fair Isaac Company. But the important thing to realize is that if you get a credit score above 740, it typically doesn't help you. Sometimes up to 760 helps you, but anything greater than 740 really doesn't help you get better interest rates and terms. But yeah, if you're above 620 and you get up closer to that 740, you are going to get the best interest rates and terms. And I think some people like to brag, or maybe for vanity reasons, they want to try to get that maximum credit score of 850, but that really doesn't help you any more than a 740 does here. In fact, a credit score of 850 probably shows that you're not using enough of your credit. The most common reason that I see for low credit scores coming in are late payments. So you want to get timely on your payments. You want to clean that up with credit repair agencies if you need to. Annualcreditreport.com is a website where you can go annually for free to see all three of your credit scores from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, all three of the bureaus. So when you go there to annualcreditreport.com, get all three reports at once. Don't try to space them out every 4 months or something like that. See where you're at as soon as you can. What you want to do is see that those reports are accurate, that there's nothing there that they're saying that you owe money for that seems to be an unfamiliar charge. Check the accuracy on your credit reports. Now, for your credit score, you can go to a place like creditkarma.com and get your credit scores. And as you probably know, you have 3 scores, and they typically take the middle of those 3 scores. So if you have a 700, a 720, and a 740, your mortgage loan underwriter is going to use that medium value, that 720. So that's your credit score. You want to see that your debt to income ratio does not exceed 50%. So for example, if all the minimum monthly payments in your life are $5,000 per month, and your gross monthly income is $10,000, that is a debt-to-income ratio of 50%. Typically, you can't exceed that. And sometimes it might make sense then to pay off a low interest rate car loan in order to get a bigger loan for a property. If you have a $400 car payment, but there are only 3 payments left, it might be good to pay $1,200 to pay that off, and then that would quickly make your DTI go down. And you need some money for this. You need a down payment of 15 to 20% to buy a rental property, again, with these conventional loans. If you put down any less than 20%, though, if you only put down 15%, you do have an additional premium to pay for private mortgage insurance. It might be something like $50 a month, and it usually takes a few years until you can make that PMI go away. But it's a 15 to 20% down payment. And you have to understand, it's also about 4% of the purchase price in closing costs. So therefore, it is 19 to 23% of the property purchase price. That's what you need to come to the closing table with. You need to show income, that you have an ability to repay the loan. It's typically the last 2 years' tax returns that you need to show, the latest 2 months' bank statements or more, and proof of employment to show that you do have income. Now, that's if you're an employee. Some people are self-employed. And when you're self-employed, you know what the game is. You might have an income of, say, $80,000, but you want to try to get a lot of write-offs as expenses. Maybe if your income's $80,000, you're writing off $35,000 worth of expenses each year. Well, that makes your income only $45,000 for you, which is great from the perspective that, okay, you don't have to pay very much in taxes. But now, if you're self-employed and you're trying to qualify for a loan, your underwriter's looking at that and, well, you're only making $45K. So I guess you can't qualify for this property. No, there's actually a way around this. What you do with your $80,000 in income, say with that $35,000 in expenses, what you really need to do is begin to depreciate these over a number of years. Then it's seen as something that's been depreciated over time. That doesn't hurt my income in the underwriter's eyes. So if you can do that with all of your expenses, for example, then your underwriter's like, yep, it looks like your income is $80K to me, so you can qualify for this property. That's how you get around that. So once you get your credit score in shape, you want to talk to a lender early. I use Ridge Lending Group because they specialize in income property loans, but it's good to talk to a lender early. And what you're after is a pre-approval letter that you can show that property seller and a proof of funds. That's what you are after from your mortgage loan officer, those two things. You want to get the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Mortgage interest rates have been low for quite a while. You probably don't want an adjustable rate mortgage. You want to get a fixed rate loan. And the 30-year is better than the 15-year because the payment's lower. Therefore, if you want to pay more and you want to pay extra, you always could because you have the flexibility. Some people like to look at the interest rate savings. Well, you save interest over time if you get a 15-year loan rather than a 30-year loan, but you actually typically make out better with the 30-year loan because instead, take that interest rate savings and invest it in something rather than trying to accelerate payoff of long-term fixed interest rate debt that's at a really low interest rate. You want to get that 30-year fixed rate mortgage. The best providers are typically in the Midwest and South because those are the parts of the nation where you get the highest ratio of rent income to purchase price. So we're talking about how do you select the right property. There are definitely some things and some newbie mistakes that you want to avoid, including ones that I made myself. Generally, you want to buy a smaller property. And we're just talking about rental single-family homes here. 800 square feet up to about 2,000 square feet, somewhere in there. That's the sweet spot. You don't want to buy a property that's too big. My first ever turnkey rental property that I bought out of market was about 2,500 square feet, and that property just worked out okay, but it wasn't as profitable as it could have been because there is a point of diminishing returns when the property gets too large. For example, at 2,500 feet, when I start getting into those larger properties, I might only get 10% more rent, but yet I have 30% more square footage to have to renovate and maintain when those things come up. So 800 to 2,000 square feet, a smallish or mid-sized property is what you want to look for. You don't want to have it be too big. You want to avoid bad neighborhoods, but you also want to avoid beautiful neighborhoods. Beautiful neighborhoods typically aren't profitable. Bad neighborhoods are just bad neighborhoods. Your property often won't appreciate, and it's difficult to attract a quality tenant to a bad neighborhood. So I like to buy somewhere not right in the middle, but somewhat below the middle. It's that lower middle area where you can get a tenant that respects the property, but yet a good ratio of rent income to purchase price to make it profitable, where you can get monthly cash flow. You can't find that with a 20% down payment on the high end. You want to find a property that has durable finishes inside it. You want durable countertops. More and more providers are providing you with quartz or granite countertops. They've actually become more affordable. And you typically want a durable flooring like a luxury vinyl plank or laminate hardwood flooring, not carpeting for tenants, or you're going to have to replace that every 1 or 2 tenant turns, and that can get really expensive. So you want to look for durable finishes that are going to stand up to tenants. And when you're doing some of this remote due diligence on what makes a good property, you want to go beyond just Google Street View. A resource like neighborhoodscout.com has data on crimes in school districts. There are a lot of other resources out there. You could physically visit the market that you're buying the property in if you wish to. Most people don't. I don't. In fact, I've bought turnkey properties, held them for a number of years, sold them for more than I bought them for, and yet I have never seen the property at all. But rather than putting your feet on the ground in a different market, WeGoLook.com is a really cool resource where you can contract with someone else that lives in that local area and go sleuth things out and tell you what's really going on the ground in real time. WeGoLook.com. Yeah, you can use this for this or a lot of other cool things in real estate. So as far as the numbers go with what you're looking for in a property, what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, this is a little nebulous. It's not exact, but you want to get a ratio of rent income to purchase price of 0.7% or greater. So that would be, for example, on a $200,000 new build single family home like we're talking about here, you want to get rent of $1,400 or greater. That's at 0.7% rent to value ratio. But that's just the top line. That's just when you're skimming across properties looking at what might be a good one. When you found a good one, what you really need to do is drill down and see if it cash flows. So in order to find out your cash flow, take your rent income and you want to subtract out your mortgage and all of your operating expenses. As you know, I like to use that acronym VIMTUM to remember all of your operating expenses: vacancy, insurance, maintenance, taxes, utilities, and management. So let's go ahead and take a look here at this property and what is sort of the minimum as to what makes a good one numbers-wise. Your rent income of $1,400 minus your $740 principal and interest, that's at a 3.75% interest rate. That $70 vacancy number, that represents the about 5% of the time, we'll say, when your property is vacant. Your property insurance of $50, the bank makes sure that you have that. Maintenance of $100, that's probably a pretty conservative number because, like I said, you're buying a new construction property here. You wouldn't expect very much to be wrong with that property for quite a while. Property taxes, $200 a month. Well, that's going to vary quite a bit by geography. In Alabama, for example, the number is probably going to be lower than that. In Texas, it'll be higher. Utilities, nothing. In a single-family home, all the utilities, the lawn maintenance, and everything is typically outsourced to a tenant. And then the property management amount of $140. Notice that that is 10% of the rent income. 10% is a common property management fee. So your rent income of $1,400 minus all of those other things gives you a cash flow of $100 here to start with in this property in your pocket every month. I like to buy for positive cash flow. You could buy for negative cash flow and think rents are going to catch up. I know rents have been appreciating quite a bit in the United States, but now you're getting sort of speculative. So I like to buy for cash flow. Understand that this $100 in cash flow, that probably doesn't sound too thrilling to start off with. Understand that cash flow is one of only 5 ways that you're paid in real estate investing. I talk about that a lot elsewhere. Also understand that your cash flow rises faster than inflation over time. Why is that? That's because your biggest expense, your mortgage principal and interest, is fixed. So in this example, that $740 payment stays the same all 30 years, which is going to feel really easy to pay decades from now with inflation going up over time. So, how would it really work if you bought this property here in this example? You might go 7 months in a row where there's just absolutely nothing wrong and you're just getting the income from your property manager. So with this $100 cash flow, we don't even have to subtract out the $100 maintenance for, say, 7 months in a row. Nothing goes wrong. So you might actually have $200 of cash flow for 7 consecutive months. And then the 8th month, something weird will happen, like a section of fence in the yard has to be replaced and it costs you $400, meaning that you're $200 in the hole that month. That's how this really practically works out. It's not a smooth ride for years and years. Hey, go ahead and put a YouTube like on this if you would. If you like learning about how to get into a rental property step by step, how it really works, what to look out for and what to avoid. Turnkey property is the way where you can live in New York City or SoCal or Connecticut or Anchorage, Alaska, places where the numbers don't make a great deal of sense from a standpoint of rent income to purchase price. And yet, even though you live there, you can buy where the numbers make sense in Memphis or Jacksonville or Chicago. Turnkey providers, they work in a direct model where there isn't any agent to pay in the transaction, Properties are pretty popular. With some providers, you're going to be on a wait list. But once you found the right property for you, it is time for you to write an offer. The provider will give you the form. And they're rarely discounted properties when they're completely brand new or completely rehabilitated for you. But we'll talk later with the appraisal and how you make sure you don't overpay. Once you've agreed on a price, you want to get a professional third-party inspection of the property before you go to the closing table and actually buy it. Please be sure to get your third-party inspection. This is like cheap insurance, where an inspector will come inside the property, inspect it from the outside as well, and he's checking on a lot of major things like the foundation and the sewer line and the roof. And if the roof has a life of any less than 5 to 10 years, typically that is something that's going to be completely replaced by the turnkey company. Remember, your property, if it's not brand new, it is completely rehabilitated. An important question for you to ask yourself when you get that report from the inspector. He will send a report, and yes, I'm using the word he. Every inspector I've ever met has been a male. But when you go ahead and get that report, that central question to ask is this property safe for a tenant? So there will be a few levels of inspector findings. And inspectors always find something, even on a new construction home. If everything were perfect, I swear, they'd probably say, go trim the bushes or something. There's always something in the inspector report, always some deficiencies or findings that the seller may need to repair for you before you buy it. So the inspector is kind of helping you out, pointing out any deficiencies at all. There are a few different tiers of deficiencies. There are health and life safety deficiencies. All of these things, you need to be sure that they're addressed before you buy the property to make things safe for a tenant. And that probably gives you some peace of mind too. For example, a railing is rickety on a porch that sits up high or something. Well, you want to make sure that that's repaired. So that's something that the seller has got to do for you. And then there are some less important findings, some other findings in the report, including ones that might be cosmetic, like there's a dent in a bedroom door. Well, you may or may not want to ask your seller to go fix something like that. Something like that is negotiable. So there are a couple different tiers, but the health and life safety ones need to be done. So yes, please do it. Even with a new construction property, there can be deficiencies. The builder might have done something wrong. Maybe a window was not installed correctly and there's an air gap there and condensation is getting inside the window. So yeah, even on new construction, you should have an inspection done. And an inspection on a single family rental home might cost you something like $500. And it's really part of those 4% in closing costs and prepaids that I talked about earlier. That is money well spent, not a place to skimp. All right, so with the inspection findings behind you, you can go on to the next step, and that is the appraisal. An appraisal is something that's done for the bank, and what an appraisal does is it verifies the quality of the bank's collateral so that they don't overlend, so that they won't exceed, say, 80% loan to value on this property if you're getting a $160K loan on a $200K property. This appraisal, they're going to let you know what the market value of your property is. That's the result of this appraisal. This is an independent third-party tool to make sure that you're not overpaying for the property. So yeah, an appraiser always shows up physically. He does come inside the property, take a look around, check out the quality of the construction and the workmanship and look at deficiencies and such. He's always got a tape measure with him. He's always making measurements and verifying dimensions as well. Never seen an appraiser without a tape measure. It's important. It's interesting to know this. The appraiser, they know the contract sale price. They know in this example that you've already agreed to pay $200K for the property. So it's remarkable, I would say the majority of the time, how the appraisal comes in exactly in $200K because that was a contract sale price. Now, what if your appraisal comes in low? What if it comes in at only $190K? Well, there's a $10,000 gap. That's a problem. Your lender's only going to lend up to 80% of that. Now you have something to negotiate with your seller. Who is going to make up that gap? A lot of times, the buyer and seller end up meeting in the middle. The opposite thing can happen as well. I've had both things happen and all scenarios happen, and say the property appraises for $210K. Well, that's awesome. Your appraisal came in above value, and congratulations. You have an additional $10K of equity above and beyond your 20% down payment on this property. And don't confuse an appraisal with an assessment. An assessment is something that your municipality does for knowing how much tax to charge in property tax. That's an assessment. We're talking here about an appraisal, something that's done for the bank. Well, now with the inspection and the appraisal behind us, it is time before you get to the closing table to sign a property management agreement if you wish to have a manager manage this for you. Now, if it's out of your geographic market, a lot of times you are going to want to have a property manager do that for you. However, I do know some people that manage remotely and make phone calls with their tenants, and if there's a problem, ask the tenants to keep the Home Depot receipt and send it to them and email it to them, and I don't do that. So in all these markets where I own properties, I have professional property managers in each one of those markets. It's a good deal in my opinion. I just happen to really value my time now. I've been doing this for a while. What a property manager does for you is they collect the rent, they handle tenant relations, they handle eviction procedures, they coordinate subcontractors like electricians or HVAC people. If you ever had to have work need to be done on your property, they handle all that. You don't have to get involved. They rent out the property for you when there is a vacancy between tenants, and you can often have some say in that new tenant that comes in there, for example, like how you might want to handle pets or something like that. But they do that for you. All the applications, all the screening, all the background and employment checks, that's all a property manager duty. So in your management agreement, it is going to state what the property management fees are. Typically, it is 8 to 10% of what your monthly rent amount is. That is called a management fee. And then in addition to that, when they place a new tenant between tenancies, they typically take 1/4 of 1 month's rent to 1 full month's rent as that tenant placement fee, in addition to their ongoing management fee. So you don't want it to turn over very often. This is one good thing about single-family homes as compared to larger apartment buildings. In single-family homes, tenants tend to stay longer. In your property management agreement, this agreement between you and the property manager, not the seller, although the seller often has a management company working there inside, the turnkey company, this management agreement between the two of you, there's going to be something about a reserve fund in there, typically just a few $100s so that the property manager doesn't have to come out of pocket if there are any inordinate expenses on the property that month, and they can take it out of the reserve fund, maybe $500 or $1,000 that you put into a reserve fund that they have access to that's held there. The property management agreement will also have some things about owner restrictions there. Yeah, there actually are some things that you're restricted from doing. For example, even though you own the property and it's under management by someone else, you can't just walk in and enter the premises anytime you want to. For example, you would need to give appropriate notice, usually 24 hours or more, to the manager and to that resident. You also want to see that the management agreement has something in there about equal opportunity housing. But this is great. I mean, using a property manager, this means that tenants don't have your information. They can't call you or email you or text message you. That's all outsourced to the property management company. They collect the rent, deduct the expenses, and send you a rent check monthly. Yes, this is what they call mailbox money. Of course, these days it's usually an ACH, an electronic deposit into your bank account. Another great thing the manager does is they itemize your statements and they categorize things into maintenance and repairs and utilities and everything else. So that way it makes it easier for your taxes. So I'm a big proponent of using professional property management. Life is too short for property management. All right, well, now you've got your management agreement. You're really getting close. It is time for your property closing, when you go to the table to sign the documents to make the property yours. And typically when you buy a property out of market, like we're talking about here with turnkey property, a mobile notary will come to your home with all of the documentation, and you do the closing there. I've done it on my home's dining room table. You can have it done in a coffee shop with a mobile notary or some other third-party place you agree to meet. And yeah, a lot of it is still signing pen to ink paper, and then that mobile notary collects all the papers and they send it off to FedEx and overnight it back to the title company to complete your closing and your recording. Hey, go ahead and put a like on this if you would, a YouTube like. And yeah, what am I? Am I insecure or I don't feel like I'm well liked? No, I just hope that more people can see the video if you put a like on it. And that also helps ensure that more material like this shows up in your feed. I'm not insecure. I'd really appreciate the like. And then you can repeat the process and buy more property, and it gets easier after your first one. The first one is the most difficult one, and this process actually accelerates. Typically over the long term, as equity builds in your properties, you can borrow money out of a property, hold on to it, and put it as a down payment into another property. And when you do this cash out refinance, that is a tax-free event. So this can really get some momentum to it here as you add more properties to your portfolio. But we're just talking about the first one today. When we talk about the architecture of your portfolio, I think it's often best for you to own real estate in 3 to 5 different markets. One of those might be your home market if you live in an investor advantage market, most of which are in the Midwest and South, but a lot of times all of them will be out of your home city and out of your home state. Yeah, 3 to 5 markets for geographic diversification in case any one area has an economic recession. See, if you get fewer than 3, you don't really have enough of that diversification. And if you're in more than 5 markets, more than 5 cities, I know some people that like to do that. If you're really into being a real estate collector, you sure can do that and own properties in 8 different markets. I don't really advocate for that, though, unless you just love real estate and live, eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff so much, because now 8 times a month, you're getting management statements sent to you from your property managers in all these various markets, and it could just get to be a lot to keep up with for taxes and practical reasons. That is how you buy your first property, the mistakes to avoid, the steps to expect. Hey, I'd really appreciate it if you share this with a friend. If you got value out of this, I love having my material shared with others. My name's Keith Weinhold. Thanks for being here, but you weren't here for me. You were here for you. We'll see you in the next video. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided GRE listeners with more loans than anyone, and it's where I got my last few loans. They finance single-family income property up to 4plexes. They're the #1 lender for beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and get your custom plan for expanding your cash-flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, a lot of investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market could provide both: Jacksonville, Florida. They've got 27% lower home prices and higher rents than the national median. Their market has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and above average appreciation for tomorrow. They often have available inventory in Jacksonville, if you can believe that. Start at cashflowandgrowth.com.
This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to GRE on our How to Buy Your First Rental Property episode. It's episode number 368. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. I've been traveling across America's deep south this week. Today, I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana. Next week, I'll be, I suppose, in America's great north or deep north. I'll be bringing you the next show from beautiful and pristine Anchorage, Alaska, about that property inspection. I told you that it is all important. Now, when you go to select that third-party inspector, and you can ask your turnkey provider for a list of third-party inspectors, or if you don't trust that because you fear that they might be in cahoots, You can find a third-party inspector in that market either on some forums or just by looking them up independently yourself. But some of these inspectors, they get really booked up, and you might have to wait a week or two for the inspector to actually come out there. You can't always get one right away. And this really adds to the timeline in buying a property overall. So keep that in mind. But once the inspector actually does visit this property that you have under contract to buy, they typically get the report itself turned around and emailed to you within a couple days. That report with all of their findings in it. And that's when you request, after you get that report, that's when you request that the seller make those repairs for you. And the seller typically gets on that and they make those repairs pretty promptly, although that part might take another week or more itself for that seller to make the repairs. Now, on that site visit that the inspector makes, where they are going to spend at least 2 hours at a single-family rental property, and it will be at least 4 hours at a fourplex. And remember, these are minimum times, so they could double. And every inspection I've ever had done, it's all been done on the same day. In general, your property inspector that checks out the property for you before you've actually committed to buy it, even though you're under contract, that inspector is thorough. I mean, they stick their head up into the attic to see if there's enough insulation up there. They do things that you wouldn't have even thought of doing. They make sure that every single door and window opens and closes correctly inside that property. They go down in the basement and they often look at the foundation or the crawl space. They get out a ladder and they get up on the roof most times. And now their report, when they're finished with their findings, they might find like 48 things that are wrong. Okay, and if you've never gone through this process before, you might think, oh, well, that home's just awful then. But really, no, it's pretty typical. And that really conveys just how thorough that inspector's findings are. Not all of them are these huge make or break findings, but yeah, it's common for them to find 25 things wrong on a property or 51 things wrong. This stuff is really common. So this entire property purchasing process, from the time that you submit the offer on the property until you're at the closing table and signing those documents to make that property yours, that whole process can take 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, or even longer sometimes. And the more units that a property has, it's typically going to take longer until it is yours. Now, as you were listening to my step-by-step explanation, it's possible that I said one thing where you thought, well, I don't know if that's true in every case. Or maybe you thought, I can think of a little exception to that one, like if you've been through this before. And here and there, understand that I need to speak in generalities. There certainly is some variability in the process from state to state within the United States, or if you're comparing this process to the Canadian process. But yeah, there it is. Yes, you can see why there is no such thing as panic selling in real estate. You can't just be in a bad mood and point and click and sell your real estate in seconds, just like that. So the absence of panic selling or panic buying, that is what keeps real estate prices more stable than almost any other asset class imaginable. And that's just one reason why so many wealthy people keep real estate as the foundation of their portfolio. It's that relative price stability, along with some other things like the 5 ways that you're paid, of course. And your next question might be, where do I actually buy a property that has these investor advantaged attributes like the ones I discussed? Well, you can find suitable properties at the same website where I find and buy my own properties. I do what I say and say what I do. That is at greturnkey.com. Well, we have a lot of great shows coming up here on GRE, including we're getting closer to the return of the brilliant Peter Zion. Oh, yes, that is where real estate investing meets geography, which really fits my passions and hopefully some of yours too. Like I said earlier, today's show was a little different. The content before the break was from our YouTube channel, and our viewers there, they found it so valuable, and it was such a well-liked video that I wanted to make it portable for you here in this format today. please go ahead and check out our Get Rich Education YouTube channel. Not only do you get masterclass level instructional content from me, but in this particular program right here about how to buy your first rental property, you also get some graphics that are going to help you when you make that visual on our YouTube channel. But I am going to put this particular video's link in the show notes for you here. Also, go ahead and find all of those masterclass level videos. They are 100% free. There are no paywalls, no signups. They are all free and public. They're all at Get Rich Education's YouTube channel. I am about to fly 3,000 miles to the northwest. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Though you might quit your day job, don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.